What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to today's video. Today I decided to sit down and break down how I go about filming my clips. Now today we're going to look at using long lens shots and fisheye wide shots by just doing simple tricks down a staircase and a handrail. Today's spot I selected is the Brooklyn 9 set. We added some NPCs here and our filmer guy here to add a little extra aesthetic for the clip. So with that being said, let's go ahead and do so. So the first thing that we want to look into when we're looking into filming a clip is understand that how we should have our frame divided up, right? So ideally we want our frame divided up into thirds. We have our first third, our second third in the middle, and then our third third over on the right side. So going from left to right, 1, 2, 3, right? So when we're doing shots, when we're filming these clips, we want our skater to be pretty much damn near dead set in the center. It could be off the center here and there a bit, but pretty much in that center third is where we want it. So real quick, let's go ahead and just get a simple trick right here on the handrail to start. All right, perfect. Perfect little backboard slide. So first thing we're going to do is film long lens style with using our camera zoom and all that good stuff. So the first thing we do is go into our replay editor and we're going to hold our right bumper and then click down on the left stick. And this is going to select our starting point for our clip. So now we hit our left bumper and that turns montage view on. So as you edit and set your key points in, it's gonna basically, you'll see what I mean. It's basic. So as you set your key points in, you're gonna see the camera move as how you set your key points. So the first thing we do is pick our point of film, right? So we get a nice little backside board slide, right? So ideally we want to see all of that in the camera. So I'm thinking somewhere right around here would be a good spot. Up and over the filmer. See that? Boom. Move that just over a bit, just to right here. All right. So before we set our first camera point down, the first thing we're going to do is set our field of view, or FOV. And to get there is using the left and right buttons on your D-pad. So go to FOV and get to the very beginning. And to make this easier, hold down your right bumper and press Y, and it zooms in on the clip that you're working on. So again, the first thing we're going to do is set our first point of our field of view. So how do we do that is right bumper and then press down on your D-pad to add key. And then this should pop up. So then what we do is we set our field of view, or how close we're zoomed in. So when you go by increments of 1, you see a very slow gradual change, right? I usually go by increments of 10. If I'm doing singular steps, I go by increments of 5. That's an easier way to kind of keep up and keep things smooth. So right off the bat, let's go ahead and start pretty zoomed in. Let's start with 30 for now. So then with 2 clicks to the left on our D-pad, we go back to the camera. So then just adjust it as so. Same thing as setting the FOV point, right bumper, down on the D-pad, set your first camera point. So then using your right triggers, allowing you to skim or scrub through the film, right till about here is where you want the next point for your camera movement. So then again, keeping it kind of centered, if you will. So when we go to the beginning, you see how smooth that looks? That's why we have the green points. The green points are smooth keys. So these keys make it so the camera movement is as smooth as possible. That's kind of how we want and what we want when we're setting our camera key points for camera movement and such. And this applies to when you're doing follow line clips as well. So moving from the first point on, we kind of want to get it right to when the board kind of makes contact, but not at that point, a little just after that. So then all we do is kind of tilt it up a bit and then again, centered, right? So that way when we go back, see how smooth that was? Still in frame, Still focus on the board, because in these shots we want to be focused on the board for the most part. But keeping the skater in frame is also another key point. So then we keep scrubbing through, and a little past the point of land. Again. And pressing Y, by the way, shows and hides your user interface. Right bumper down on the D-pad sets another key point. So that way, so far, you should have this. It's looking good so far. So we keep scrubbing a little forward past that. And ideally what you want to do is, again, keep it centered, but we should still kind of keep that focus on the board, right? But let's kind of keep that focus right on the point of where the knees are bending, right? So that when we come back to this point here, we could come back to this middle section, right about at this middle point, and just tilt that camera down so we're still looking at the board. See what I mean? So that way, as it comes smoothly, it's as if someone's manually like having the camera follow the skater. And then right up into this point, as I do that little low pop ollie over, we then retract the camera movement back to about here. And then at that point, see, because it was a little too fast, at that point what you would do is kind of just scrub through it a little bit more and set another key point. And then to delete it, you hold right bumper, go to the next key by cycling through your left or right on the D-pad, and then to remove key, you press up on the D-pad, removing the previous keyframe. And then at that point, we should have boom, just like that. So at that point, once the camera stops moving, you then set your end point by holding right bumper, then clicking down on your right thumbstick. So now that you have your clip, the next thing to do is add a little detail to it, right? So by cycling through your left and right buttons on your D-pad, you go to camera shake. Hold down the right bumper and then press the left on your D-pad, and that'll take you to the very beginning of the clip on any point where there's no keyframes. So then at that point, you add a new keyframe, and we add some shake, but not too much. You know, try to keep it light, tasteful. So no, for long lens shots, no more than 5 on your camera shake, just to keep it nice and tasteful. So now we play it with the shake. Looks pretty good. Now, if you want to add some flair to it, you want to make, kind of emphasize the trick a little bit. After adding some camera shake, pressing left on the D-pad takes you to play rate. So what you can then do is slow the clip down, slow the speed of the clip. So this is how you do slow-mo points. So if I wanted to do a slow-mo point of the actual board slide, for example, we'll set it right about here, right? So you set your first key point of play rate at 1, and then by bringing up your user interface, you then scrub a little bit forward, just enough, just a couple frames. Add your second key point. I always go by point increments, so we go down to let's say 0.4. That's always a good spot. Go back to the beginning. That's one way to do it. Me personally, I like doing it this way. So let's go ahead and delete those keyframes real quick and go to the very beginning. And if you watch my Twitch streams, you see me doing this very, very often. But I like to have it at a sweet spot at 0.69. So that way, when it's kind of slow-mo, but also kind of like at a decent pace. And that's how you film with long lens in session. So let's go ahead and film the same trick, but with the fisheye. Let's go ahead and do that now, shall we? All right, so the first thing that we want to do is when you're filming in fisheye is obviously go into your camera settings by pressing start, camera, and then go to camera lens. I prefer the fisheye wide. Some people prefer fisheye, but I prefer the fisheye wide. That's just me. So now that we have fisheye wide, we kind of have a pretty decent spot where this filmer is. So we're basically just gonna kind of base it off of that, right? But the idea is to get a little closer. So how I like to start my clips essentially is start from looking at the staircase, and that's when we add our first camera point. And again, to add your first keyframe for your camera movement point is by holding the right bumper and then pressing down on the D-pad. So from there, we scrub forward a little bit to about, say about here, right? And go a little forward more. And then by using the up and down on the D-pad, you raise your camera up and kind of start looking towards where the skater is a little bit, just right there, right? So when we go back to the beginning, boom, decent movement. So then you scrub forward a bit right as the ollie happens. You want to kind of have it still in that center portion, but kind of off-centered a bit. You step back a bit. And again, doing stuff like that, like how I just did right here, is just personal preference. Beautiful. So then right when we get to about here, we're going to step back a bit. Also step down a bit to right here. A little inwards more. Pull that keyframe to right about there. Skip forward a bit, just like that. So that way it still keeps them in frame and it starts that follow through motion. So then once you get past that point, and audio cues are basically a good way to go. So that's how I always go about it at first. So when you slow it down and scrub through it slowly by applying a little pressure on your trigger, you'll hear this kind of sound towards the end. Listen very closely. Right when you hear that weird wow sound or whatever the hell it's called, that's kind of at the sweet point. Skip it a little forward. Right there. That's when you begin the rest of the follow through per se, right? So the idea for the follow through is to kind of make it look like it's about to have impact. So as we turn, we also using down on the D-pad to kind of lower that. That was a little too low. Lower your camera to right about here. So when we scrub back, all we would really have to do is, you see how it's still not quite there? All you got to do is just turn and angle it up just a bit. So that way, it's kind of a quick shoo. And then so now, after that quick shoo, we're going to have to make it look a little more impactful. So right as the impact in the first few centimeters or inches of, roll away happen, we then turn and keep it as centered as possible and just do a quick push in with the camera. So that way from here, that looks horrible. So the next movement from this point is to kind of make it look more impactful. So from here, we do this gentle turn and just push in with it. Oops. So right about this point, right about here. There we go. Push in a little further. Right about here. And at just about the same distance, we then pull it back. Stand up a bit. Turn. Oh, that's a little too far. And basically just fine touches, essentially. Like that, exactly. And now we add the exact final touches of it. So as always, some camera shake. For this type of camera shake, we want to go right in between about 10, 15. I like to go about 14 for this. And then we go back to camera and we go to the very first points. So the very first point, using the right bumper and then your triggers. I'm holding right bumper and using left trigger to kind of tilt the camera and kind of making this look like it's dead even with the stairs. Then still holding right bumper, using the right on the D-pad to go to the second point, then using the right trigger to kind of tilt my camera towards the right, and then replacing the key marker by, again, holding right bumper and pressing down on the D-pad. So then at that point, the camera movement looks as like so. So then we're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to tilt it to the left just a bit, and then at the end, we tilt it all the way to the right. Just like that. So that way, we have the clip as such. And there you have it. That's how you film in fisheye and long lens while filming on a staircase, doing single clips. And the same thing applies to, you know, gapping over the staircase as well. But yeah, if anybody have any questions or any other comments, you know, feel free to leave it down below in the comment section. If you guys would like to see me cover how to do follow lines and any other questions that you have in the comments, feel free to let me know. As always, guys, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe as always. And please click that notification bell so that way whenever I upload a new video for session or anything else, you'll be notified instantly. But with that being said, y'all, much love, thank you so much, and yeah, see ya.
Because I deserve to go out, and I'm going to get drunk because I deserve to get drunk and get out of my way. Now these people get up there and they drink and they drink and they drink, and the body begins to tell you,
please, you better slow down.